We are now at a different field with yearling heifers. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about this herd of cattle that we have behind us?
So there are 31 heifers here, and these are essentially the daughters of the cows we just saw from last year. So the majority of them were born in February and March last year, and we have them in a separate group now. So these will be AI'd here in about another month or two, so that they will calve whenever they turn 2 years old. So they will be having their first calf in February or March of 2022.
Okay. So these heifers here were born just last year. But how much do these weigh a year into their life?
So it varies a lot, as you can see. We have some that are bigger and some are smaller, of course. I would say on average 850 pounds. So at weaning last year, a lot of these weighed between 600 and 800 pounds. That was in October, and we really haven't pushed them a lot. We've fed them every day,
right?
But they haven't just had the grain poured to them like, say, a fat steer might, or something that was going to be butchered. We're kind of slow growing them.
Okay. So can you kind of explain the difference between feeding a heifer like this and feeding a steer?
So there are several ways, of course, you can do it, but a lot of their steer counterparts right now are on full feed. And not everyone does that, but that's the way we finish out our steers. Is they have access to pasture right now, but they also have access to hay and as much feed as they want every day. Whereas these heifers right now, they're only getting about 5 pounds of grain a day. So that, along with hay, will hold them over until we get more green grass, which is still trying to grow, but we're not there yet.
It's coming. It's coming. A question I get a lot from students when we're going and talking to schools is, how much water does a cow need to drink each day?
So it depends a lot on the different time of year. You know, whenever there's a lot of moisture in the grass they're eating, like here another month or so, it's much less than in the middle of summer when, you know, they're eating very dry grass. So like these heifers this size, I would say 15 to 20 gallons a day. So they go through a lot of water. And so right now, this group, they're able to eat or drink from a concrete water tank. It's automatic and it comes out of the well. So they love their well water.
You're not having to take water to them.
No,
it's
correct.
Just here in the field for them. You kind of mentioned steers and finishing out a steer. Can you explain what that term finishing out means?
So before we harvest a steer, or say we stick a heifer in there that we don't want to keep in our breeding program, we want them to have adequate fat, so that whenever we do harvest them, it's a good eating experience for the consumer. And so we essentially finish them out, which takes them to the right weight with the right amount of fat on them to harvest them.
Standing behind us, you know, we see the Herefords with the red cows and the white face, and I see some Angus in here too, but we have what the term is black Baldies. Can you kind of explain what a black Baldy is?
Yes, so to answer that, we have several of these who are out of Hereford cows and a black bull, and several that are out of black cows and a Hereford bull, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so one parent is a Hereford,
right, which
red body, white face, and then the other parent is a black Angus typically,
correct,
and that's how you get the black Baldy.
And some of these, they may only be an 8th Hereford, but the white face is a dominant trait and it's hard to breed out. Like there's one over here who just has a little bit of white on her, and so she has less Hereford in her.
Yeah. So Bill, can you kind of talk to us about how long this farm has been in your family?
Actually, this farm's not been in our family very long. We bought it 4 years ago, and we feel very fortunate that we were able to get it to where we live. A 300-acre farm in eastern Missouri was a large farm. Yeah. This is where the railroads first came through, so the ground was divided up a lot because of that. One of our other farms has been in the family 125 years, and another one will be 100 years year after next, and we're really looking forward to that. To have Century Farms is going to be, I think, pretty special.
It is.
So
because you've had this in the family so long, Crooked Creek and what you guys have been doing has been passed down, obviously. There's a level of sustainability that you have to be able to pass this on down to future generations. Can you talk to us about what sustainability is for you guys, and then how that plays a part in what you do?
Well, sustainability is a three-legged stool. You know, part of it's environmental, a big part of it's environmental. We want, by being fourth, fifth, and sixth generations here now, we want to make it better for the next generation than what we've got it. And I feel that most all farmers are the original environmentalists. We have to be. You know, we're environmentalists, and farmers in general are always somebody that's looking forward. We don't very seldom look backwards. We look forward, whether we're planting a crop or whether we're breeding cows or whatever we're doing, we're looking forward. And we're doing the same thing with the environment and what we do as far as managing the farms. So, you know, we're concerned about the water infiltration, and we want to keep the water. You know, cattle and farmers are really agriculture is a solar storage battery. Whether it's chickens or beef or corn or wheat, we are storing solar energy in that corn crop, or we're storing solar energy in the grass crop. So we have to depend on the environment. So we should take care of the environment the best we do. This farm, we practice intensive grazing. What intensive grazing is, this is divided up into 14 to 16, 18 acre pastures. They're pretty much all the same size as best we could. So we can move the cows through the pasture and kind of make it like a salad bar, that they're grazing as they're going, and then we can let that grass rest and then move to the next pasture. By letting that grass rest, we're not doing total intensive grazing, but we're mimicking what grazing animals 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, what the buffalo did. We graze a piece of ground and we move on. We graze a piece of ground and move on. What happens by doing that is we keep more diversity in our grass. Otherwise, if you leave a cow in the same pasture all the time, she's like everybody else. She's got a favorite thing she's going to want to eat. She'll eat it until she kills it. And then the other stuff that she doesn't like, she won't eat, and it'll get so mature that she won't eat it. If we move all the time, then we're going to get her, she's going to have a better diet, and we're going to be better for the real estate. The other thing we're doing by moving all the time is we're spreading the manure all over the farm. So we're really not taking resources off of the farm. The only thing we're actually taking off is a pound of beef it produces. The rest of that's all staying on the farm. In order to do that, we had to upgrade the water system. When we bought this place, there was one drinker below a pond and one drinker for all these this farm, and it was just not possible to graze the grass the way we wanted to. So we've almost doubled the number of cows here. I think you can look around and see the grass is still in pretty darn good shape for the first part of March, and we do that by practice and by practices that are good for our environment. So, you know, when I was a young person in school, we called stuff stewardship and animal husbandry. That's the other part of sustainability. So we need to make a profit. You know, everybody's got to be able to pay their bills. So that's part of being sustainable. If we can't make a profit, we're not sustainable. Somebody else is going to have this.
Right.
We have to leave it better for our next generation. That's extremely important to us, and we need to be good stewards. So that's my personal opinion of sustainability.
Yeah, great, thank you. Now we're joined with Bill's better half, Linda, and can you just kind of explain what your role in Crooked Creek is?
I'm very blessed to be what I would call the grunt. I love the flexibility of helping wherever I can help. The good fortune is we have been blessed, as Bill's indicated, living just outside the St. Louis metro area, to be able to offer to consumers, direct to consumers, some of the beef products that we raise right here on the farm.
So what does that look like? And what are the challenges of marketing beef for consumers?
It's an educational process, and Bill would be the first to say that more and more people want to know where their food source is coming from. We have the ability with different educational outreaches, farm visits, direct contact with households, families, interested parties, Facebook, those kinds of outreach, to share a little bit about our story and ultimately be able to work with local butchers to have a product available for marketing.
So we're kind of coming off of COVID, and it's very much a part of our lives right now. But something that the pandemic did that we saw at Farm Bureau was consumers really wanted to know where their food's coming from, and they had time to really figure that out. Did you see an increase in consumers wanting to buy your beef directly from you guys as farmers?
I'd like for Bill to weigh in there.
Probably 3 to 4 times the interest and the amount of beef we sold last year versus years past. It was just absolutely amazing. We could have sold more if processors were available. Processing, small processors, a lot of them have opened back up. There's actually a group of us farmers that have gone together and bought a small plant. So we did that. And we had customers that had beef ordered and would call, my freezer's not in yet. Can I move down the list to, and so it's a whole mindset change. We've become a just-in-time society. And, to have to plan ahead of time. And unfortunately, it's a re-education of what cuts of meat are if I sell you a round steak and you consider it to be a steak that you're going to cook on a grill, and you associate that with us, you're probably not ever going to buy any more meat, even though it says steak on it. I mean, it's a different way that piece of meat needs to be prepared. Right. So there's a big education of consumers, and it's really a lot of fun. Talking to people is an enjoyable thing.
And an important part of having a great tasting steak is going to be the fat content
intramuscular fat.
Yes, intramuscular fat in that steak. How do you determine how much fat is on a cow from the field, or is there a way to determine that?
Well, we're going to be talking about 2 different kinds of fat. One kind of fat is good. The other kind of fat is not necessarily something we're going to consume. So intermuscular fat is the flecks that you will see in a steak, in a ribeye, or a T-bone, or a fillet, or a porterhouse. That's the flecks of fat, and you can in a quality animal you can see some in the sirloin, and you can see some in the chuck also. That's where the taste comes from. The other fat, historically it was used to cook French fries in. Yeah. Or make candles out of. We don't want to put that kind of fat on an animal. We want to keep that fat to a minimum, because that's an expense to put that fat on there. It consumes resources, and we don't want to spend the resources to put that fat cover around an animal. We want to pick an animal, and we want to raise it in a way to concentrate that fat that makes it taste good, and the fat that's actually healthy for us. Before that time, we can do the DNA testing and know what the intermuscular fat content is going to potentially be, or you can actually do a scan of it, and it can tell you the percent intermuscular fat. The other thing is, these heifers they're being slow fed, because we don't want to deposit fat on them. We don't want their pelvic region full of fat, and we don't want their udders full of fat, because that's going to sometime limit their milk production when they become productive. But if these were fat steers, when we look at them, we look at their tail and see how their tail head starts to fill out, and their brisket. And their brisket, if your mom and dad or barbecuers, that's where you're going to be brisket. Or since tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day, if you're into corned beef and cabbage, corned beef is brisket. Brisket is this part of these heifers where their neck comes down, and in between their front legs is a brisket. As they start getting mature and they get ready for harvest, you'll see that brisket expand and fill out, and that's where you really ought to tell a steer is getting ready to harvest, is to look at that tail head and look at that brisket, and that's going to show its maturity as far as fat, because one of them may be 1,000 pounds depending on the breed and be ready to harvest. Another one could be 1,800 pounds and be ready to harvest. So it's not the weight thing, it's actually their maturity.
Yeah, perfect. You mentioned earlier processors are a vital part of how we get meat to consumers, but can you kind of explain what that line looks like?
Well, there's a lot of ways that things are processed in the United States, and there's a lot of things that's raised. That's the great thing about the United States, is we have choices. Yeah. We have great choices, and all beef is healthy and wholesome, and that's kind of where we need to start from. So after that, there's a large processing plants out in the western states, in Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Iowa, where there's a greater concentration of finished cattle. Missouri has got either the third or the fourth most beef cattle, second, third, or fourth, depending on which year it is. Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Missouri are always second, third, and fourth on the number of beef cattle, but we don't have that many people that raise fat cattle, so we don't have big processors. We have small family processors, and they when we schedule it, we take it in for harvest, and then we do something a little bit different. We let our beef hang for 20 days and dry aged. We think it gives it a more beefy flavor, a little bit more earthy flavor, and it concentrates the protein in the dry aging process. We like that very well. And then all of our beef we have frozen, so that we sell it frozen. We're not able to produce at the level we need to sell fresh beef. And that's really the difference between the small people like us and the small processors and the large processor. Same inspection process, same cutting process. The difference is most of us small people are going to have frozen beef versus the big plants are going to push out fresh beef. And most of the big plants are not going to have beef that's got bones in them. It's going to come out mostly as boneless, so the cuts will be a little bit different also.
So the processor, like a small processor, like you're talking about, they're still inspected, there's still regulations that they have to abide by. That food is just as safe as it would be from anything else.
Yep.
Okay. As a family, you guys have really took Crooked Creek beef and have grown it over the years. But can you talk a little bit about the legacy that you hope that this business leaves behind, and why the agriculture industry is so important to you guys as a family?
Well, actually, Linda's dad was a big inspiration to both of us. She grew up in Sedalia, and Linda's dad was very much involved in agriculture, and I actually worked for him for a year and a half when I was a young person. And he really created both of ours desire to share what agriculture is with as many people as we can. Between 1.5% of the people raise all the food for this country. Yeah. It's really important that the other 98.5% understand what we do in order to do it. So that is honestly the legacy that we enjoy sharing. We hope that we'll have a grandchild that wants to keep doing this, and that we've built something that works for them. Her might be the most appropriate one that lives here on this farm. But we think it's very important that people know where their food comes from. And I like to make a joke out of everything. St. Louis, where we live, I tell people I live in the French toast capital of the world, because when it snows, I see a video of the guy standing out in the grocery store that's everybody's running out with milk and bread and eggs. And the only thing I know you can make with that is French toast. So what that tells me is we're not food prepared.
Right.
And we need to be food prepared, and we're not going to be that without being educated. So the legacy that I personally believe is important is to share what, you know, a farmer does and the process they go to and the care they give for whatever crop they raise. And hopefully one of our children or grandchildren can benefit from that in the future. That'd be my take.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of Missouri Farm Bureau and the consumers that you guys all feed, thank you for doing what you do. Farmers and ranchers have a tough job, and you guys are doing a great job at kind of spreading your story and feeding consumers, and it just means a lot to us that you're doing this. So thank you.
Thank you.